Hi, I'm Frank Caruso, producer of Oregon Life. Now and then I like to go back and show you shows that we've done, maybe clips that I didn't put in the original story. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to visit three people. One of them is the Prairie Burn Manager, as you will see, Arlan Kay. Another one, because Olbert Gardens is doing the Oregon Garden Tour. We go back and visit Denise again and see her garden and talk about her beautiful garden, her beautiful roses that were bequeathed to her from her father, and she still has them today. And then we visit a new gardener, Hannah. Uh, she does honey. She has chickens. She has eggs. She's growing wildflowers. She's growing vegetables. It's a great episode. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any ideas, send them my way. My address is on the bottom there. Email me or when you see me around town. Anyway, enjoy this episode.
Why do we burn? There's a number of reasons that a prairie is burnt. That is part of a prairie ecosystem. So fire is an integral part of a prairie. With the fire, you burn, you stunt or kill the invasive species, which include almost all kinds of trees, as well as some of the invasive plants that have been brought over by the European settlers. The fire does a number of things. It gets rid of the thatch, which is all of the dead grasses and plants that are on top, which kind of stunt the growth. It also, if you look at it, at the end of burn, everything's black. It warms the earth. So in the spring, you're warming the earth, you're getting rid of all of the excess, and you're turning that into the burned grass, the ashes, actually become fertilizer for the plants. Prairie plants have extremely deep roots, and the value that they have is that there is a tremendous amount of carbon sequestration that happen with these deep roots, taking the carbon out of the air, putting it in the ground. In the ground, it starts the whole composting process, enriching the soil, and in the Midwest had been blessed with all these prairies that we have this deep black soil, even up here. On the terminal moraine, where we have a lot of rocks as well, but we do have a fair amount of soil that is a gift from the prairie plants. Those prairie plants also send, and they're sending their roots down 10, 12, 15, even 20 feet, that as the plants die, part of them will die. These are now little tubes, little pipes that send water down into the subsoil. So they are water retention. The importance of a prairie is that they're heavy in water retention, sending the soil down, enriching the soil, and fire is a natural cycle of that. In nature, you could be having a fire every 1 to 5 years. Typical. And the First Nation peoples would often set fires to keep the grazing grounds open for the different animals. Where there was a deer, the buffalo. Yes, we had buffalo in Wisconsin that were needing to have the grassland. If you don't burn, you have a forest that will invade. If you look over my shoulder, you will see young, small trees as well as some big trees that have invaded. That's going to be part of my summer project, to be opening some of that up again.
I began this gardening adventure in this home when the home was new in about 1999, and the yard was barren, the house was still under construction. I was moving from Madison, and I knew I wanted a larger yard. I wanted to experiment with more plants and change the woody shrubs and trees from what I had in a more established home in Madison. So before I left Madison, I dug out some of my favorite flowers, and the roses that my father gave me. He was a member of the Rose Society, and he had passed some roses on to me. And all of those came out here to Oregon and sat on my front porch for many months while I waited for a very creative designer to come up with a full yard landscape design. And it took quite a while for me to install those plants, because there were rock walls that needed to be inserted and sod put down. I had some black dirt hauled in for areas I knew would be kind of special beds. And the first things I planted then were my father's roses, and then the plants that I thought were important that I brought from the other house. And so that was the start of it. And from there, I spent time going to local nurseries, but it wasn't always a nursery. It might have been Kmart or Shopko, or, where I could find a deal, or maybe friends would give me plants from their yards when they were doing divisions, and I would bring those in. My sister lived in Oregon, and she had some really great ephemerals in her yard. So I started a little Wisconsin wildflower garden down by the pond area. And she had hostas and daylilies and the old-fashioned peonies, and all of those were the initial perennials that I brought into the yard. Really, everything that's growing in this yard is something I planted. My sister helped me put in those initial roses, and everything else I dug in myself. So it's been enjoyable to see how you can plant a 5-foot-tall autumn purple ash, and then eventually it's shading the whole deck in the back of the house.
Learner. I'm a learner is what I would describe myself as right now. That's like very much the phase I feel I'm in with where I'm trying to be. And so finding the opportunities to learn in the right, what I'm most interested in learning. Like, I guess I've started thinking about how quickly time goes a lot more lately, and how wanting to be really intentional with the steps I want to take now to be, where I see being in the future. So this is my smoker. I'm lighting some basically just brush in there to create the beginning of a little, not a fire, but kind of like embers. And this kind of helps distract the bees or confuse them. Basically the smell of the smoke makes them confused and not as able to communicate with one another. So it makes them a little calmer when you're going to open a hive. And my hive's pretty tame. There's times I open it without doing all of this, but if we're going to maybe take some frames or look into it a little more, they'll be more active. So the frame has 2 lids. It kind of has this outer lid and then an inner lid, which is a little stuck actually right now. So this is what a frame of capped honey looks like. And you can see, so down here the bees started forming some comb that I'm actually going to scrape off. I don't really filter or like process mine very much. I pretty often leave it with the comb and just scoop it into jars from the frame, and I don't pasteurize it at all. So I think that adds a lot to the taste. I think with a lot of things, they just taste really different after they've been pasteurized. So, for this honey, I left the comb in there to harvest them together, and the comb is edible, so, you can spread it on toast or whatever. But sometimes I separate the comb, and so this is basically this comb, which is beeswax, balled up here, and I'm saving it to process into candles or some chapstick in the future when I get around to it. I'll harvest some flowers while we're going through. So yeah, the blue ones are bachelor buttons. These are Rudbeckia or Black-Eyed Susan. And this garden is kind of starting to crisp up. This was the first planting. Something I learned this year is I got a little overeager and planted my garden really early. And obviously we had some storm damage on our corn with those winds last week. But some of my crops back here, I learned that our soil is low in nitrogen, and some of our crops back here I just planted so early that they experienced too much kind of weather extremes one way or another. But so this is the last, I did all these flowers from seed, and this was the last scatter seed area I did. And this is definitely coming the quickest and looking the healthiest. So that was a good experience in kind of learning that, I don't know, I can calm myself down in the spring and not get too overeager. So here I'm kind of starting to kill off the grass, where I'm going to create a larger garden plot with compost added to it next spring. Starting our garden here, since we did it in the ground, was basically a lot of tilling this year that I'm hoping to kind of cut down on the tilling work initially by killing off the grass over the seasons. So I'll plan on probably quadrupling the amount of space that this is taking into this area, and I'm going to do drip irrigation to water the garden to avoid overhead watering, because we had some issues with fungal diseases from overhead watering. Thanks for visiting my little hobby yard, and I am going to go water my cucumbers.